I don't know about either one of them. In fact, they are recorded in Second Kings chapter 11 and Second Chronicles. And I want to look at it in Second Chronicles. And we want to start reading in Second Chronicles 22, verse 7. Okay. Second Chronicles 22, verse 7. This will start us up where we left off last week. Through Asahiah's visit through Jehoram, God brought Asahiah's downfall. When Asahiah arrived, he went out to meet Joram, the son of Jehu, the son of Nimshi, whom the Lord had anointed to destroy the house of Ahab. And while Jehu was executing judgment on the house of Ahab, he found the princes of Judah and the sons of Asahiah relatives who had been attending Asahiah, and he killed them. Then he went in search for Asahiah, and his men captured him while he was hiding in Samaria. And he was brought to Jehu and put to death. And they buried him, for they said he was a son of Jehoshaphat, who sought the Lord with all of his heart. So there was no one in the house of Asahiah powerful enough to retain the kingdom. So Asahiah is murdered. Now, Asahiah had a problem. He was married to a lady by the name of Athaliah. And you say, well, I don't know anything about Athaliah. Well, Athaliah is the daughter of Jezebel and Ahab. Now, what do you know about Ahab? Bad news. What do you know about Jezebel? She's a witch, really, a witch. Not just a bad person, she's a witch. And her daughter marries Asahiah. Now, Asahiah is murdered by Jehu. Now let's start reading for today. Verse 10. When Athaliah, the mother of Asahiah, saw that her son was dead, she proceeded to destroy the whole royal family of the house of Judah. So she murdered all of her brother-in-laws. Anybody that was related to her son, she murdered. And when you think about that, she is wanting to be the queen of Judah. So look at verse 11. But Jehoshaphat, the daughter of King Joram, took Joash, son of Asahiah, and stole him away among the royal princesses who were about to be murdered, and put him and his nurse in a bedroom. Because Jehoshaphat, the daughter of King Joram and the wife of the priest Jehoiada, was Asahiah's sister, she hid the child from Athaliah so that she could not kill him. He remained hidden with them at the temple of God for 6 years, while Athaliah ruled the land. So when you look at Athaliah, she massacres the Davidic kingdom. She wants to take over the throne for herself. And it is both a political and a theological rebellion. She wants to strike at the very heart of the Davidic covenant. You remember the Davidic covenant said, there will always be a man from the line of David to rule on the throne in Jerusalem. And she says, I'm going to kill them all. and it's actually a rebellion against God. She's trying to get the Davidic covenant not to be in place anymore. And the second thing, it's a political rebellion. So she is not wanting to allow the rightful heirs to be on the throne. And she's following in the ways of the Northern Kingdom. That's what they did. They killed, when they became king, they killed everybody. And that's what she does. So it's an illegitimate rule after slaughtering the rightful heirs. And her authority is real, but it is not legitimate. And sometimes we just think of it, it's a spiritual revolt. No, it's a religious revolt. She still advances the Baal worship. She attacks the Davidic line. She opposes the very line through whom God will send Christ. And her reign is a picture of religious and political rebellion against God and his purposes. And before we go on, let me say this. Wherever you look, you will see rebellion against God. And sometimes it is clearly displayed, as it is with Athaliah. Sometimes. Sometimes it is hidden away, and it's rebellion in the heart. And you see, the rebellion in her heart is what caused all the outward rebellion. Now, can you imagine killing all of the people in your family?
No. And
I mean, I can understand not liking some of them. I can understand that. You know, friends you choose, family you get. I can understand that. But she kills all of them.
But I'm sure she didn't do that herself. So she had people do it.
That's right. And so she ordered them to do that. And they did.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did. But did you notice what it says? She's the one who is responsible.
Uh,
The second thing I want you to notice is this little Joash is hidden away. Did you notice that? While there's the rebellion and it's in full swing, evil is ruling, God has not lost. God is not like Germany that loses in the last minute. He hasn't lost. And he keeps this little Joash alive. And did you notice he uses people to do that? Look at this. It's a lady by the name of Jehoshaphat. She's the daughter of King Jehoram, but she is married to the high priest. And she hides Joash and his nurse. And so for 6 years, Athaliah rules. And if you look at it, It looks rational. It looks like she's just protecting herself. It may even look to be moral. We're getting rid of the bad king. But in the end, it's rebellion against God and against his plan to bring salvation. You know, sometimes we think sin is ruling and everything is going bad and nothing is going right. And we say, where is God?
Mm.
Isn't that right? Where is God? Why isn't he doing anything? And oftentimes we don't see how he's working. And he is. You know, he uses Jehoshaphat to hide the king. He uses the priest to protect him. And they wait. In the seventh, look at 23, verse 1. In the seventh year, Jehoiada showed his strength. Now, Jehoiada is the priest. He's the high priest, and he has been protecting Joash. And he made a covenant with the commanders of units of 100. And they went throughout Judah and gathered the Levites and the heads of the Israelites' family from all the towns. And when they came to Jerusalem, the whole assembly made a covenant with the king at the temple of God. So this rebellion against Athaliah has been going on for 6 years. And in the seventh year, everything is ready. Notice what it says in verse 3. Jehoiada said to them, the king shall reign as the Lord promised the
Prinzessin
descendants of
Diana
David.
hatte auf das Wort gehorchen und war damit die erste.
Okay, I don't know. Did you notice there's a reference to the Davidic kingdom? The Lord promised the descendants of David. So we're going to restore God's will for the kingship. And then he divides them up. A third of you are going to stand duty on the Sabbath and are to keep watch over the doors. A third of you to go to the royal palace, and a third of you to the fountain gate, and all the other men are to be in the courtyard of the temple of the Lord. No one is to enter the temple except the priests and the Levites on temple. They may enter because they are consecrated. But all the other men are to guard what the Lord has assigned to them. And the Levites are to station themselves around the king, each man with his arm in his hand, and anyone who enters the temple must be put to death. Stay close to the king wherever he goes. We're going to protect this little Joash. And the Levites and all the men of Judah did as Jehoiada the priest ordered. Each one took his men, and those who were going on temple on the Sabbath, and those who were going off temple, for Jehoiada the priest had not released any of the divisions. And he gave the commanders of units of 100 the spears and the large and small shields that belonged to King David and that were in the temple of God. And he stationed all the men, each with his arm in his hand, and around the king near the altar of the temple, from the south side to the north side of the temple. And Jehoiada and his sons brought out the king's sons and put the crown on him. And they presented him with a copy of the covenant and proclaimed him king. And they anointed him and shouted, long live the king.
Does it say anywhere how old he was?
Well, he is about 8 years old. Okay, so he was born, he had a nurse, and then he was hidden for 6 years. So he's in the seventh year. So he's about 7 or 8, maybe 9. Pardon? It's in the seventh year. So it could be that he's just 7. Well, with all the commotion going on in the temple, and everybody has it being very secretive about it, there's a big commotion. Notice verse 12. When Athaliah heard the noise of the people running and cheering the king, she went to them to them at the temple. She looked, and there was the king standing by his pillar at the entrance. And this is they have 2 pillars. One of them is Boaz, and the other one is Yakin. With strength, he will make certain fast. There are promises to the Davidic line that God will keep their line alive and ruling. The officers and the trumpeters were beside the king, and all the people of the land were rejoicing and blowing trumpets, and singers with musical instruments were leading the praises. Then Athaliah tore her robe and shouted what? What did she shout?
Farad.
Farad, treason.
Yeah.
Treason. Well, that's
That's
kind of
so,
ironic, isn't it?
yeah.
Because who was actually the one who was a traitor?
She.
She was. She
Yeah.
was the traitor, and she covered up her sin and made her sin look good. And she calls doing right sin or treason. So, Ulrike, you want to say something?
No.
Okay.
Don't know.
Notice what happened. Verse 14. Jehoiada the priest sent out the commanders of units of 100 who were in charge of the troops and said to them, "Bring her out between the ranks and put the sword to anyone who follows her." For the priest said, "Do not put her to death at the temple of the Lord." So
What?
they seized her as she reached the entrance of the horse gate on the palace, and there they put her to death. So maybe it's like in Wizard of Oz. Do you remember the Wicked Witch of the West? And when she is killed, people are freed. And that's what happened. Athaliah is killed, people are freed. Then Jehoiada made a covenant that he and the people and the king would be the Lord's people. And all the people went to the temple of Baal and tore it down. That's good. They smashed the altars and idols and killed Matan, the priest of Baal, in front of the altars. So rebellion of Athaliah tried to destroy God's order. The restoring of God's order starts off quietly, but then comes to fruition and destroys the evil, both Athaliah and the Baal worship. You know, spiritual decline, when it changes, leads to spiritual renewal. And that's what happened. Did you see? They made a covenant that they will be the Lord's people. They removed the queen. They decided we're going to follow the Lord. And as the consequence, they removed the Baal worship. I think that's important that you notice that. It's not that they removed the Baal worship first. They turned to God. And the consequences of them turning to God is the removal of the sinful worship. Then Jehoiada placed the oversight of the temple of the Lord in the hands of the priests who were Levites, to whom David had made assignments in the temple to present the burnt offerings of the Lord as written in the law of Moses, with rejoicing and singing, as David had ordered. He stationed doorkeepers at the gates of the temple, so that no one who was in any way unclean might enter. And he took with him the commanders of hundreds and the nobles and the rulers of the people and all the people of the land, and brought the king down from the temple of the Lord. And they went into the palace through the upper gate and seated the king on the royal throne. And all the people of the land rejoiced. And the city was quiet, or came to rest, because Athaliah was dead. So before we leave that, I want to think about a couple of things. What do you think this story teaches us about God's faithfulness? When Athaliah is ruling, it doesn't look like God is in control, does it? And God was working in a quiet and unseen manner. There's the second thing I want you to notice. Did you notice that God uses unimportant people? He used the nurse. He used Jehoshaphat. He used the other ones, Azariah, Ishmael, Mosiah, Eliphalet. He used them all. And oftentimes we think, well, we're not the high priest. We don't have a power base. We can't do this. And God uses unimportant people who remain faithful to God. And at the end, they are victorious. Last thing I want you to notice, God preserves the Davidic line through quiet and courageous obedience. And that's why I want to kind of make a application. So I can't answer this for you. I can answer it for me, but I can't answer it for you. Where do you think God is calling you to quiet, behind the scenes obedience? Perhaps it will never be seen, but it matters to his purposes. You know, all the people who took place in the rebellion showed a quiet, behind-the-scenes faithfulness that God used to keep his promises. One person has said it this way, and I think it's true. God is faithful and keeps his promises. But to keep his promises, he uses faithful people. Isn't that true? God is faithful and keeps his promises.
Yes.
But to keep his promises, he uses faithful people. I don't know if you remember the story about Asa. Do you remember that? Where it says, God is on the search, looking for people whose heart is devoted to him. And when he finds them, he strengthens them. So God is faithful. And to be faithful, he uses faithful people. So if you were Joash and you were, say, 8 years old, 7 years old, 8 years old, and you were king, how would you feel?
Terrible.
Terrible.
Well,
Why would you feel terrible?
well, lastly, I don't know, but I think it was like, who was that? Samuel war, Salomo war von Samuel, also der hatte einen Lehrer und ich denke, Jehoiada war sein Mentor.
Yes, Jehoiada is his mentor. And Joash is 8 years old. Most people who are 8 years old that I know of are interested in playing soccer and eating ice cream and going to sleep. And you have to remind them, brush your teeth and do this and do that. Joash was no more fit to be a king than any other 8-year-old.
Mm.
And Joash is the king. So he has a mentor, and it's Jehoiada, the high priest. And Jehoiada helps Joash be a good king. Notice what happens in verse 1 in chapter 24. Joash was 7 years old. There it is. He was 7 years old when he became king, and he ruled in Jerusalem 40 years. And Joash did what was right in the eyes of the Lord all the years of Jehoiada the priest. And Jehoiada chose 2 wives for him and had sons and daughters. He does right in the sight of the Lord all the days of Jehoiada. So Jehoiada is the driving force behind Joash's reign. Now, let's think about this. What would you think if you were Joash and Jehoiada put you on the throne? And Jehoiada helps you. And Jehoiada's wife is like your mother and helps you. What would you think?
Was perfect.
That's great. Look, and would you be upset with Jehoiada? No, you would be, without him, I would be dead. I wouldn't be king. I'm king because of God's faithfulness. But God's faithfulness used a faithful man, Jehoiada. And I would just be really thankful. Notice what the thankfulness leads to. Verse 6. Therefore the king, verse 4. Sometime later, Joash decided to restore the temple of the Lord. he called together the priests and the Levites and said to him, "Go to the towns of Judah and collect the money due annually from all of Israel to repair the temple of your God. Do it now." But the Levites did not act at once. Therefore the king summoned Jehoiada and the chief priests, and said to him, "Why haven't you required the Levites to bring in from Judah and Jerusalem the tax imposed by Moses, the servant of the Lord, and by the assembly of Israel for the temple of the testimony?" Why do you need to restore the temple? Verse 7. Now the sons of that wicked woman, Athaliah. Did you notice how, again, she's described? She's a really bad person. Had broken in the temple of God and had even used its sacred objects for the Baals. So we need to clean this up. At the king's command, a chest was made and placed outside the gate of the temple of the Lord. And a proclamation was issued in Judah that they should bring to the Lord the tax that Moses, the servant of God, had required of Israel in the desert. And all the people, all the officials, and all the people brought their contributions. Did you notice it? Gladly, dropping them into the chest until it was full. And whenever the chest was brought in by the Levites to the king's official, that they saw there was a large amount of money, and the royal secretary and the officers of the chief priests would come and empty the chest and carry it back to its place. And they did this regularly and collected a great amount of money. Then the king and Jehoiada gave it to the men who carried out the work required for the temple of the Lord. And they hired masons and carpenters to restore the Lord's temple, also workers in irons and in bronze to repair the temple. They had a lot of money, and where there's a lot of money, there are lots of problems. You know why? Because people are interested in getting money from me. Notice what it says in verse 13. But the men in charge of the work were diligent. They were faithful. And their repairs progressed under them. They rebuilt the temple of God according to its original designs and reinforced it. And when they had finished, they brought the rest of the money to the king, and with it, it was made articles for the Lord's temple, articles for the service, for the burnt offerings, also dishes and other objects of gold and silver. As long as Jehoiada lived, burnt offerings were presented continuously in the temple of the Lord. So the people are faithful. They take care of the money. They use the money to restore the temple. And then they have money left over. And they use it to make utensils for the temple. Verse 15. Now Jehoiada was old and full of years, and he died at the age of 130. He was buried with the kings in the city of David because of the good he had done in Israel for God and his temple. So, what do you think about Jehoiada? Tommy, what do you think about Jehoiada?
He's a great man.
Great man. And why is he a great man?
Because I think he was courageous in what he did to protect the king, and then teaching him also how to live a life that pleased God, and he had so much influence through that on the whole kingdom.
Good. And notice the temple he was in charge of the temple. All the money was well taken care of. Not a problem with money. Now had great influence. He was faithful in small things and in large things. And he was honored because of the good he had done for God in his temple. So he's
Yeah,
buried among the kings.
I wanted to say he fears God. I mean, he has a good relationship with God, which makes him do the good stuff or understand
That's right.
what God wants for the temple and everything else.
Yeah. What do you think about his influence on Joash? Good or bad?
Yeah, of course, good.
Good. And Joash was good
Until
in all the days of Jehoiada. Is Jehoiada leading Joash, or is Joash leading Jehoiada?
I guess he's a mentor. Joiada is mentor, kind of a mentor for Joash.
Yeah. But did you notice there was a problem? He said, go collect the money, but the Levites did not do it at once. Did you see that?
Mm.
Then the king summoned not the priest, but Jehoiada and said, why aren't you doing that? So who's leading whom? Jehoiada's leading Joash, but Joash is also leading Jehoiada. When
He's the king,
Jehoiada
so he
doesn't
gives
do
the
the right
last
thing,
orders.
pardon?
I guess Joash, because he is supposed to give the last orders. The Levites are not maybe they need this. How do you say? They respect Joiada more.
Yeah. Well, for some reason, we don't know why, they didn't do it.
Mm.
And they're the people who work for Jehoiada. So Joash says, Jehoiada, go take care of this. And did you notice it's what Moses commanded? So Joash is being mentored by Jehoiada. But when Jehoiada doesn't do everything exactly according to the law, Joash says, this is something we need to do. And Jehoiada says, yes, you're right. We need to do that. And so while we look at it as a mentor-mentee relationship, over time it changes.
Mm-hmm.
You see that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that speaks greatly to the character of Jehoiada.
Mm-hmm.
He could say, well, what are you doing and saying? I'm the priest, let me do that. And he says, you're right. I'll take care of it. Faithfulness in the life of Jehoiada not only includes passion, but it includes integrity. It includes how the money is handled, how he oversees the ministry, and that's all due to Jehoiada. Let's look at the sad ending of Joash. Verse 17. After the death of Jehoiada, the officials of Judah came and paid homage to the king, and he listened to them. They abandoned the temple of the Lord, the God of their fathers, and worshipped Asherah poles and idols. Because of their guilt, God's anger came upon Judah and Jerusalem. And although the Lord sent the prophets to the people to bring them back to him, and though they testified against them, they would not listen. Then the Spirit of God came upon Zechariah, the son of Jehoiada the priest. And he stood before the temple and says, "This is what God says. Why do you disobey the Lord's commands? You will not prosper. Because you have forsaken the Lord, he has forsaken you." Did you remember in Asa, when you seek the Lord, he will be found by you. Because he's searching for you. And when you forsake the Lord, he will forsake you, and you will not find him. That was kind of a normal message from God. But people didn't like that message. That was not a very popular message. So notice what they did. Verse 21, they plotted against him. And by order of the king, they stoned him to death in the courtyard of the Lord's temple. So it's not just the counselors, it's the king as well. And he ordered Jehoiada's son to be executed. Notice verse 22. King Joash did not remember the kindness Zechariah's father Jehoiada had shown him, but killed his son. You would say,
How can that be?
how can that be? Joash had lived because of Jehoiada.
Yeah.
Joash enjoyed kingship and success because of Jehoiada.
Yeah.
And when Zechariah proclaims the word of the Lord, Jehoiada kills him. Joash kills him.
Joash.
Notice what Zechariah says as he lay dying. May the Lord see this and call you to account. May God judge you for what you were doing. And it looks like evil has won, and God is far away. Let's look at verse 23. At the turn of the year, that is in the spring, the army of Aram marched up against Joash, and they invaded Judah and Jerusalem. So the army of Aram marched down. They went to the western part of Judah. They defeated them there. And then they attacked Jerusalem. And he killed all the leaders of the people. And they sent all the plunder to their king in Damascus. Notice what verse 24 says. Although the Aramean army had come with only a few men, the Lord delivered into their hands a much larger army. Why? Because Judah had forsaken the Lord, the God of their fathers. Judgment was executed on Joash. When the Arameans withdrew, they left Joash severely wounded. His officials conspired against him for murdering the son of Jehoiada, the priest, and they killed him in his bed. And so he died and was buried in the city of David, but not in the tombs of the kings. Those who conspired against him were Zabad and Jehoshabad, and the account of his sons and the many prophecies about him and the record of the restoration of the temple of God are written in the annotations of the book of the kings. And Joash died, and Amaziah became king in his place. So when you look at Joash, I think there's a problem. He listened to Jehoiada, and Jehoiada told him what to do. And the faith of Jehoiada helped Joash. But it wasn't a personal faith of Joaz. You know, the great thing about mentors is they teach you to do, and then you do. And then they evaluate and say, well, this was good, this was not so good, and they teach you to do. And the goal of a good mentoring program is to let you learn how to do things on your own. That's what parents are supposed to do with their kids. Teach them how to be good human beings following the Lord, so that when they turn 20 or 30, they know how to do it. When the parents aren't there, they know what to do. The parents are to teach their values in such a way that their values become the values of their children. Mentors teach values, and values become the values of the mentees.
But how come he forsakes them all of a sudden?
And for some reason, Joash forgot.
Bible doesn't explain it.
Yeah, well, it does explain it a little bit. Look again at verse 17 and 24. After the death of Jehoiada, the officials of Judah came and paid homage to the king, and he listened to them.
But who
So
are
Joash got different counselors, and he followed different counselors with different advice, and he rejected the advice of Jehoiada and Zedekiah and the Lord. Did you notice? Look at verse 19. Although the Lord sent prophets to the people, it wasn't just Zechariah, it was other prophets. And though they testified against them, they would not listen. And Jehoash listened to the false advisors and didn't remember the kindness that he had been shown. And he had problems. So Dolly, you had a question.
Yes. Is this the same Zechariah, the prophet?
No, this is
Who wrote the book?
this is not the prophet that wrote the book of Zechariah.
Yes, okay.
Okay.
So, but he was a prophet too, or what? No.
Well,
He was the son.
he was
He
the
was.
high priest, and then
Mhm.
God sent him with a message to Joash.
Mhm.
So he was the high priest, and God sent him a message. It says the Spirit of God came upon Zechariah. So this message is from God.
Okay.
And the question that you have is, who does Joash listen to? Did you notice the sins that are described are the sins of Athaliah? When Zechariah challenges him, Joash says, no, I will not listen. Joash abandons the house of the Lord. He worships idols, and he does not listen to the prophets. And he removes Zechariah. And before we leave that, I can't tell you, but you need to ask yourselves the question, which voice shapes your decision? When you make a decision, who helps you make the decision? When there's a change in spiritual influence, what keeps you anchored in the Lord? You see, borrowed faith must become personal faith. Joash's faith was rooted in his relationship to Jehoiada. He was loyal to a human leader. And it was borrowed faith. And personal faith is rooted in direct loyalty to the Lord, not just simple human loyalty. Did you notice how God judges them? He uses a small army of Arameans, and they lose everything. Joash is wounded, and he's murdered by his own servants.
Mhm.
Look at his life at the very beginning of his reign, and his life at the end of his reign. How was he at the beginning? How was he at the end? Help me out. How was he at the beginning?
Threatened to be murdered.
Mm-hmm.
Finally, he was murdered.
Finally, he was murdered. And God had saved him from being murdered.
Mhm.
And he chose basically to be murdered. He got in with the wrong people. And you see the contrast in whom he listens to? He listened to Jehoiada. And now he listens to the others. And he rejects God's admonitions.
That reminds me of Solomon's son when when
Rehoboam.
Israel was divided, and he also didn't listen to the elders,
Yeah.
but
Mhm.
to the younger
Yeah.
people.
And when I think about Joash, he is a sobering reminder that starting well is not enough. You have to finish well. Okay? Starting well is not enough. You have to finish well.
I have to think of your words, buddy. Borrowed faith and your personal faith.
Yes.
Sometimes I like to look at the political or social situation. I I just wonder, where have these leaders been before the death of Jehoiada? What kept them? That's
Yeah.
very interesting. And I feel they were very, very strong, had kept silent, and Joash's character, he was kind of people-pleasing, you know what I
Yes.
mean?
I would
And
agree with you.
and I also ask myself, where have been the followers of Jehoiada, the Levites? Was Zechariah the only one, apart from this chain of prophets, to say, no, that's not the right way?
Yeah.
I just
You,
wonder the whole thing, the whole setting of people, where have the good ones been? You
yeah.
know,
And I agree with you. You say, what happened to all the good people? And there's a saying in English that says, for evil to triumph, good people do nothing. For evil to triumph, good people do nothing.
Mm.
And I think that's what happened.
I, I don't know, because in verse 19 it says God sent prophets, but they would not listen. So it
Yes,
means
that's right.
good
And
people
that's what I'm
tried
saying.
their best, but I guess it's somebody's decision
Yeah. And
to listen or not to listen.
that's what I'm saying with the phrase, God
Mm.
sent them the prophets. God sent them Zechariah. They heard it. And what did the good people do?
didn't do anything.
Nothing. I mean, look what they did. They went and rebuilt the Asherah poles and the idols. They redid that. So we went back to Athaliah. And that's kind of typical in the way politics works. One person takes over and says, we're going to do everything new. And after a while, 40 years, we go back to the old way because we're disappointed. And that's what happened.
I see the whole problem with actually the king, because he's in command. And
Yes,
King Joash, he did have good people telling him, hey, don't do this or that, but he listened to the wrong people.
that's
Because
right.
Zechariah and other people, I think they must have tried, but he decided,
And
as the
he's got,
person in command, to listen to the wrong
I
side.
think that's right.
Hmm.
I think that's right. And I am not condemning Jehoiada. I'm not saying he did anything wrong, but Jehoiada's influence was good. Joash's faith collapsed
Yes.
when Jehoiada has gone.
Hmm.
And good mentoring aims to move people from dependency upon me to dependency upon God. So at the end of the mentoring relationship, they are functioning without influence from me. because they have taken over my values. And something went wrong with Joash. It was not good. And that's why I say Joash's life is sobering. Starting well is not enough. We must finish in faith. He ruled 40 years. And at the end of his reign, he got what he was threatened with at the beginning of his reign. He was murdered. And, notice what it says. His officials conspired against him for murdering the son of Jehoiada the priest, and they killed him in his bed. And he had all kinds of problems because he didn't know whom to trust. The people that he trusted were not good. Okay, well, let's stop here. And I want you to think about 3 things. First thing, whom do you listen to? Because whomever you listen to, they shape your life. Finishing well matters most. Past obedience does not grant immunity from future obedience. Humble reception of correction, an attempt to follow God's word, consistent repentance are means that God uses to help us end well. Last thing, when you mentor someone, help them to depend not on you, but on God. Because that's the test of mentoring. They need to depend not on you, but on God.